Okay, I think we're ready to start. Okay, so today is Saturday, October 13th, 2018, and we'll start with the verse of homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, so we are working our way through the Anguttara Nikaya, and now we're in the Book of Threes. And so these are suttas which are all of them structured upon groups of 3 items. And so now we're starting a new chapter within this collection. So this is chapter 5. It's called the minor chapter, I guess, because it's made up of short suttas. And so and some of these we can go through rather quickly. Okay, so sutta number 41 is called present. And so it means, the word present is being used here not in the sense of a gift, but things that are present rather than absent. So here, this sutta and several of the ones to follow are concerned with the generation of merit. So the Pali word is punya, and maybe I have to say a little bit about what is meant, by merit. So the word punya it's working very slowly today. I think in Sanskrit, I think it's punya. So the Pali word is punya, the Sanskrit is also punya, and it's derived, according to the commentators, from a verb punati, which means to purify. You'll have to be patient with my computer today. It seems to be to be throwing a temper tantrum. I don't know why. Yeah, the word rendered as present is sammukhi bhava, which actually comes from the word mukha, means face, and sam suggests the idea of together with. So this is something like coming together face to face, or coming in front of one's face, the state of coming in front of one's face. And so it's speaking about when through the presence of 3 things, a kulaputo. Kulaputa, it's literally the son of a family. But we have to use now gender-neutral words, so we could say a person from let us say a layman or a laywoman. And it's described, this person is described as one saddho, which means one who has saddha. Saddha is faith, which in Buddhism, it's not blind faith, but it's trust or confidence. And this person generates or produces, or brings into being bahum punya, much merit. So now we come back to this word merit, which is derived from the verb punnati, according to the commentators, meaning to purify. And so the meaning of merit, often what I find is that Westerners or Americans who come to the Dhamma don't like the word merit because it suggests that, when we used to go to elementary school, we used to have these little cards with rows, and if you behave well, then the teacher has a little card too with silver. One has detachable silver stars with gum on the other side. Another has detachable golden stars with gum on the other side. So if you do really well in your behavior in school, then the teacher will take, if you do moderately well, she'll take the card with the silver stars, pull off a silver star, put it onto one's report card, and so you get a silver star. And if you do excellent, then she'll take the slip with the golden stars and take off a golden star and paste it onto your report card. And if you do badly, what do they have if you do badly? There must have been some symbol. Okay, maybe a bad face?
Now they do have like faces, like a sad face.
Yeah, maybe it will be. I don't know. Yeah, I think if you do bad, then maybe you get this on your card. Okay, so people now, they think of that when you do meritorious deeds in Buddhism, it's sort of like you have your little invisible, intangible, sort of hovering over your head, but perceptible only to very advanced yogis, your little report card. And then when you do good, sort of the King Yama or somebody pastes a silver star there, and if you do really good, then somebody pastes a bright golden star there, and if you do bad, then somebody will paste the frowning face on your card. Okay, but it's not quite like that. But punya is a term for, we could say it's a term for wholesome karma, but it's wholesome karma considered, the way I would understand it, considered from the standpoint of its capacity to yield desirable results in the course of one's migration through the cycle of birth and death. And so sometimes people have the attitude, oh, I don't have any need for merit, I don't have any desire for merit, I just want to do good for its own sake. Okay, I think to do good for its own sake is more valuable, and I would say it's a higher on the scale of the wholesome than sitting around thinking, sort of calculating, maybe using your computer or sort of rating different types, like you have your little bank account, your merit account, which people in Asia do have, I'm told. There are little merit books. So you could think, okay, if I offer alms to some individual monks, then I get so many points. If I give an alms offering to the Sangha, then I get even more points. if I go to the temple and take the precepts on the Uposatha day, then I get still more points. If I go to a meditation retreat, then I get still more points. And then which gives the greater amount of merit? Loving kindness meditation, recollection of the Buddha, insight meditation. So you sort of rate them numeric in terms of their numerical value. So we get that, people actually do that, I believe. But, okay, this doesn't mean that one should adopt an indifferent attitude towards merit, because there are certain things which naturally, I would say, we desire as preconditions for living well, and particularly for being able to live, okay, safely, happily, relatively free from care and distress, and to meet, especially as Buddhist practitioners, to meet with suitable conditions for encountering the Dhamma and practicing the Dhamma. Okay, so we say that one of the benefits of merit, the fruits of merit, is to be reborn back into the human realm. So if you don't do meritorious deeds, and if you sort of violate the canons, the standards of merit, you can risk taking a rebirth into, if you do really unwholesome deeds, rebirth into the hell realms. Let's say unwholesome karma of a moderate degree, you can be reborn into the realm of the pretas, the afflicted spirits. If you do other types of unwholesome karma, you can be reborn into the animal realms. And even then you should do some merit, because if you're born into the animal realm, there's quite a difference between the living conditions of maybe an animal that's living out in the wild, exposed constantly to predators that are just looking for a delicious meal, and a dog or a cat that's been adopted by a human family and is assured of its regular meal each day, loving care, if getting sick, brought to the vet for treatment, much better living conditions than maybe even 70% of the human population. And you could say, that even for the animal, that is the fruit of merit. Okay, and then if you do stronger, wholesome karma, you be reborn in the human realm, but would you like to be reborn, let us say, as a Buddhist practitioner, devoted to the Dhamma, reborn in Saudi Arabia, where you can't even encounter a Buddhist book if it's smuggled into the country and you get caught with it, you risk imprisonment. Okay, and then one wants to live with at least a certain standard of economic security. I don't like the idea of doing merit in order to be extremely wealthy, but one wants to have at least a satisfactory standard of living so that one doesn't have to spend all of one's time struggling to balance 3 jobs, taking up 18 hours a day, and so one barely has time to sleep and eat. And then one wants to have good health, a fairly long lifespan, maybe not extremely long, but to live a full human lifespan, say of 80, 85 years. So all of this is the fruit of merit, of wholesome karma, and especially wholesome karma that's sort of rooted in Saddha, the Buddha Dharma, is what is going to bring us into connection with the Buddha Dharma from life to life. So if we don't do that wholesome karma connected with the Dharma, then we might have good health, long lifespan, economic security, popularity, physically attractive features, good family relationships. But one spends one's life just pursuing mundane goals, one never even gets to hear the words Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But if one does that merit, then either one is reborn into a Buddhist country, into a Buddhist family, or if not, then you're born into maybe a predominantly Christian country, or even Muslim country, or Hindu country. But by the time one reaches the age of maturity, suddenly, through what seems to be the play of circumstance, one goes into a bookstore, there are some books on Buddhism. What is this about? Let me find out. Curiosity comes up. Or suddenly one might be walking down the street and then one sees a sign, Buddhist Dhamma talks, such and such a place. Let me find out what that is about. So why is this all happening? This is sort of on the surface, it looks like just coincidence, just chance. But if we have the eye to see beneath the surface, then we could see that this is the unfolding of merits that have been done in the past, connected, merits that have been rooted in saddha, in faith in the Buddha Dhamma. Okay, so this is some of the explanation of merit. And then the text, other suttas, I think actually we'll come into this. No, it actually comes in the Anguttara Nikaya, I think in the Book of Eights, so we won't get to it for some time. But the texts speak about 3 bases of merit, that is 3 means of generating merit. So these are giving or generosity, dana, sila, observing precepts, observing the constant 5 precepts, and then occasionally observing the uposatha precepts, the 8 precepts on the full moon days and the dark moon days. And then bhavana, the development of the mind through meditation. Okay, so in this sutta that we've coming to today, so the Buddha, let me increase. Is it clearly visible in the back? Okay, so now the Buddha in this sutta is speaking about 3 things that should be present for a person from, let's say, a householder endowed with faith to generate much merit. Okay, so the first condition is for faith to be present. And faith here, as I said earlier, it's not just blind belief, but this is trust or confidence. And I would say that it's trust or confidence accompanied by devotion, by a feeling of devotion. So it's faith and trust, I would say, in wholesome principles and virtuous ideals, beautiful, inspiring, uplifting ideals. And so from the Buddhist perspective, it's particularly having faith in the 3 jewels of Buddhism. And in fact, we call these Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we call them ratana, the 3 jewels, because they're extremely rare, extremely difficult to encounter, and extremely precious. So they are the source of all benefits that pertain to the path to enlightenment and liberation. And so when one's aspiration is to find some path, some means to release from dukkha, from suffering, And then one searches and inquires and investigates and explores. Then one encounters the Buddha, either in person or through his teaching. One encounters the Dharma. One encounters representatives of the Sangha. So then this provides a grounding for faith to arise in the three jewels, the triple gem. And so even having that faith and expressing that faith through the act of saranagamana, going for refuge to the three jewels, to the triple gem, this in itself generates much merit. But now in this sutta, that faith in the triple gem is being taken just as the first factor, and here the merit that's going to be highlighted is the merit that comes from dana, from the practice of giving. So first, there has to be, to generate much merit, there has to be that faith in the triple gem. Actually, to get merit from giving, there doesn't have to be faith in the, I have to backtrack, there doesn't have to be faith in the triple gem. There can be faith in any kind of spiritual teacher, spiritual principles, or even just faith in that giving or goodness. That giving is a good practice, that generosity is a good quality, that it's good to give to those in need. And here, in the Indian context, where the practice of giving is directed especially towards the renunciants. So the idea that it's good to give in order to support samanas and brahmanas, to support the renunciants, whether the non-Brahmanic renunciants or the renunciants coming out from the Brahmin caste. So those who have left the household life in order to lead a life of spiritual investigation, contemplation, spiritual cultivation, in order to realize the ultimate goal within their respective systems. So that's a kind of pan-Indian ideal or pan-Indian virtue, the practice of giving as a support for renunciants. But within the Buddhist system, it's particularly giving to the monastics who have absorbed the teaching of the Buddha, who are upholding and practicing the teaching, and who are cultivating in order to realize progress, to achieve progress along the Buddha's path, and to attain the final goal of the Buddha's teaching. Okay, so this is the faith. That's the basis for generating that merit. And then, of course, there should be an object to be given, has to be present. And so, whatever the objects could be, and usually the text mentioned 4 primary objects of giving. So, sort of the most simplest and most universal object of giving is alms food. And so in the countries of Buddhist Asia, especially in the southern tradition of South and Southeast Asia, it's common practice for the monastics to go on daily alms round. In Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, probably still in Laos, every day the monks will take their alms bowl and go out in the morning, walking silently down the streets, and people will line up with the food that they've prepared, and as each monk, or sometimes the nuns, walk by, they'll put a spoon of something, whatever they've prepared, into the alms bowl or into these carrier baskets. In Sri Lanka, it's not the common practice to go on alms round, but what makes it especially meaningful that I found in Sri Lanka, going on alms round, because people are not expecting you. Unlike in Thailand and Burma, where they're actually lining the streets waiting for the monks to come. In Sri Lanka, they're not usually not expecting you. So when you come on the first day to a particular hamlet, a group of houses, and you just stand there, it's quite different from say, in New York, where people, usually both parents will go to work, the children go to school, or even if somebody is at home, the windows are closed, the doors are shut. But in the village, hamlets in Sri Lanka, people, because it's a hot climate, they have the doors open, the windows open, and people are somebody's constantly coming in and out. So to hang laundry or to play, the children to play outside. So you're standing there with your alms bowl, and then somebody will come out, and then suddenly they'll realize, Handru Watinoa. What? No, that's the present tense. Veduna? Wow, my Sinhalese is getting bad. Handru. Vedana. Vedana. Vedya, that's it, Vedya. Handru Vedya. Yeah, that means the monk has come. And then if it's the children, they'll go back into the house and tell the parents. Or if it's the woman, she'll go into the house, or she'll come to the monk and say, is it to wait? Wow. Is it Inda? Inda Handru. Wait. Inne. I haven't used this like, what, about 2001? Yeah. Inne Handru. So wait. And then they'll go and then they'll quickly prepare something and bring it. Okay, so I was saying that the simplest thing to offer, so that's available every day, is food. And then on special occasions, I'll offer robes. But usually like once a year, there'll be the robe offering ceremony. But on other occasions, they might offer robes. But nowadays, I have to say, robes can last 4 or 5 years. Even I have a robe that I've been wearing for 7 years. They just don't wear out anymore. Okay, then there's a dwelling place, a lodging, and then medicines. And then, of course, nowadays, the essential things like computers, cell phone, books. Okay, so anyway, there's an object to be given. And I think this sutta is really speaking about the situation of somebody going on alms round. So the object to be present. So I think this is envisioning a situation where there's a monk going on alms round. And so the object present will be food that's been prepared and that's offered. And as we'll see in later suttas, it's when offering gets done not just casually, like with one hand, just like giving something, putting into the bowl with one hand, but it's done respectfully, usually with both hands, and then with gestures of respect, and then with doing the bowing down to the monastic. Okay, and then when those worthy of offerings, I think the sutta uses the word dakineya. So dakineya is based on the word dakina. So dakina, it's an item to be, it's the act of giving, the act of making an offering. And then those who should be given items to be offered, those who are worthy of gifts, are Tiki-nipāta. And ideally, sort of at the highest level, the ones who are truly Tiki-nipāta, worthy of gifts in the highest sense, would be the Arahant disciples. And in fact, the word Arahant itself comes from the verb arahati, the Pali arahati, Sanskrit arhati, which means to be worthy. So the arahat is a worthy one because they're worthy to receive the offerings of the basic requisites. And so it's said that those who are not yet arahats are using the offerings of the faithful somewhat like as a debt, sort of like, or we could say as a loan, so that when lay people make offerings to us, we're using them as a loan in that we have to repay the debt, and we repay the debt by living or practicing earnestly with the aspiration to become truly worthy of the gift. And we become truly worthy of the gift with the attainment of arhatship. Okay, so when those worthy of offerings are present, and this is an interesting point, what is said sort of in the commentaries, that the layperson who's offering the gift, when offering the gift to particular monks, shouldn't think, oh, I'm giving to this monk, I'm giving to that monk, I'm giving to these monks, because these are the monks from my temple, my monastery, or these are the monks that I like, these are the nuns that I like. But they give the gifts thinking that these monastics represent the Sangha. Sort of represent, you could say, even the Aryan Sangha. So even though they might be quite ordinary people, still relative beginners or newcomers on the path, but one is envisioning them as representing the Aryan Sangha, the community of noble ones. And so it's done as a common practice in Sri Lanka at alms offerings in Sri Lanka. I pick it up a little bit from the Sinhalese, that there's like a long chant that comes when there's a house offering or an offering when people bring alms to the temple to offer to the monks. The long chant that begins something like that: we make this offering to the Arya Sangha Ratna, headed by Sariputta, Moggallana, Mahakassapa, Ananda. And so you think that even though they have passed into nirvana centuries ago, but I'm making this offering to the Sangha that's headed by Sariputta, Moggallana, Mahakassapa, Anuruddha, Ananda, and so forth, as though they are also receiving the alms offering. Okay, and then just wrapping up the sutta. Wait, let me just wrap up. So then the text says, when these three things are present, then a clansman endowed with faith generate much merit. Okay, Richard, after a long time. Yeah. Take the wireless microphone.
I'm a bit puzzled because the first three are the three sentences. The second clause is the same in each of them, right? But the conditional clause, when faith is present, when an object to be given is present, and when those worthy of offerings are present.
Yeah.
Are different. Now, the second or the third of the object and those worthy of offerings are clearly distinct from the clansman, in that the clansman is not the gift and so on. But in
the first one, when faith is present,
Yeah.
where is the faith? Does that mean the faith of the clansman who is endowed with faith
Yeah.
generates?
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Yeah.
So, but then, does that mean that when the clansman endowed with faith, it does not have, or then I'm more puzzled, because if it means that, does that mean that his faith does not generate merit when faith is not present? And if that's so, then when does faith generate present merit in the first case?
Okay, I think I understand the question. But the amplifier for this microphone is quite high, quite strong. Anybody know how to turn down the volume? Jen, I think, knows.
Can we test it again? George
What is that?
does have a loud voice.
It's
Richard maybe it's okay.
it's too loud.
If you hold the mic further away.
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
okay.
But I think I understand the question. But maybe repeat the question now.
That is, in the first statement,
Yeah.
does that, when does the clansman endowed with faith
I see.
generate merit? Does he
Okay,
generate it all the time?
Okay.
Because he has
Yeah.
faith, or?
Yeah. I see the point of the question now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so let us say that the clansman is endowed with faith. So the faith is a continual, ever-present quality dormantly within this particular clansman. But now, I think what's being envisioned, this is my interpretation, it's when those worthy of offerings approach, say, they're coming on alms round, so they come to the house of this clansman. Then when he sees them, then the faith gets aroused, sort of it becomes activated. So that is what constitutes the first condition. So he's a clansman endowed with faith, is that the faith is always there, but he might be, say, in his garage, working on his car, fixing the motor of the car. So though the faith is there, but while he's working on the car, the faith has sort of not been stimulated, it's not gone into active mode. But now he looks up out of the garage, he sees maybe a flash of ochre go by, ochre or saffron go by, and he looks up and he sees a group of monks standing outside the garage.
So then
So
potential,
now the faith and sort of it's a joyous faith gets activated.
so potential faith
Doesn't generate merit. Actual faith, or faith being acted upon, generates merit.
I think the way, let us say that is, I think, what is being said in the sutta.
But it doesn't have sound at the moment.
Yeah, I think it went down too much.
Okay.
As long as,
Now,
yeah, it just has to be amplified a little bit. Yeah, Johnny?
I have an interpretation, not sure whether it's valid or not.
Okay,
When faith is present, that means the diner may not exist, but is purified by the giver. And in the case two, is so it is in case one still a karma by the mind only. There's no action. In the case two, there is an action, and the diner is purified by the giver.
yeah,
In the third case, there's bodily action, there's mind action, and the diner is purified by the giver and the receiver.
yeah.
So that has the most merit.
Yeah, that is actually true, but I'm not sure that exactly answers or addresses the point that Richard brought up. But I think the explanation I gave does, that it's the faith is activated, say, when this clansman sees that those worthy of offerings have arrived. And if, say, he doesn't have any object to offer, say it's since he wasn't expecting them and there's been nothing prepared in the house, in that case, still his faith is activated and the faith is directed towards those worthy of offerings. So this is what will take place, say, in the Buddhist country, and this has happened, numerous times to me in Sri Lanka. So the person will come up and they'll sort of bow down, they'll do the vandana and say, Bhante, we're so sorry, but we weren't expecting you. We just don't have anything prepared. So even with that, they'll generate merit. Okay, is there any other questions based on this? Yes, Kenneth? And again, take the wireless.
Bhante, as far as dana is concerned, probably not in context of this particular sutra, but does there have to be a physical object to be given? Could it be something like knowledge, like what you're doing?
Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be giving a physical object, yeah. In fact, even there are many sutras, or a number of sutras that speak about the two kinds, actually sometimes three kinds of gifts. So I think in the older sutras they speak about two kinds of gifts, amisa dana, the gift of material things, and then dhamma dana, the gift of the Dhamma. Then later texts, I'm not sure whether this occurs in the suttas, but certainly it comes in the commentarial tradition. They expand it to add the third kind of gifts, which is abhaya dana. That's the gift of safety, the gift of security. So when there are people in trouble, and then one gives security to them, one protects them, or animals that are subject, say, to danger, and then one protects them by giving them safety and security.
Bhante, your answer right now, it doesn't work.
Oh, it's not working?
No.
I think it is. It's just that it's... Okay, just speak loudly then.
Yeah. Bhante, with what you just said, amisa, then there's also another word, pratipatti. Is that similar to dharma, dana?
Pati dana?
Yeah, pratipatti.
I think that would be the gift of practice.
Gift of practice.
Yeah, in a way that's not really a gift.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, but that is considered like maybe it's pati puja.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just...
Puja is an offering, a formal offering. So this is, instead of making just the offerings of food and water and flowers and lights to the Buddha, which are amisa puja, the gift of material things, one gives pati puja, one does one's practice as with the mind that this is my offering to the Buddha. Okay, can we move on to the next? Okay, boy. Again, try with that mic.
Bhante,
Yeah, now it's a bit too much, okay.
what would happen if a person does the three things but without faith?
If a person does
All these three things but without faith.
the three things,
1, 2, no, just 2 and 3.
oh, I see. If 2 and 3 are present without faith,
Yeah.
okay, I would say it's possible to make a gift. Okay, say a person doesn't have faith in ascetics and Brahmins. When I use the word Brahmin here, I'm using it in the Buddhist sense of renunciants from the Brahminic clans. Okay, so renunciants come, and the person doesn't really have faith, but maybe they'll think, okay, giving is a good thing, so let me give a gift. I'd say even that is some kind of faith. So if they give really casually, just let me get rid of these. I have, some extra food and I'm not going to eat it, so let me just give it to these guys. I'd say that of course, they'll get some merit from the gift, though it would be less than if they're doing it with faith and devotion.
Not because to get rid of the ascetics, but because someone is hungry.
Because?
Someone is hungry.
Yeah. So at least they're doing it to feed the hungry. Okay, let us move on and see what comes up next. Okay, here, look, so this sutta gives us the criterion for understanding how one has faith and confidence. And the words here are, okay, the Pali text says, tihi tanehi, so this is through three things, you could say, or in three cases. So veditabo, one can be understood, I'm translating very literally, one can be understood to be a person of faith and a person of confidence or trust. In this sutta, it's highlighting there's a subtle distinction of two qualities that are brought in here. Two qualities that are very closely interrelated, interwoven, though they're a little bit different in the way they're used. One is saddha, and the other is pasada. And so one who has saddha or faith is called saddha, and one who has pasada is said to be pasanna. It's interesting, the problems with languages. Okay, we have saddha, which we can translate as faith, but then saddha would naturally, we would tend to translate it as faithful. But faithful has acquired different meaning, different range of meanings. Okay, here it's giving meanings of being realistic, authentic, close, accurate, exact, truthful. So that is being like faithful to the Spirit or faithful to my word. Then it takes on other meanings of being loyal, devoted, trusty, trustworthy, reliable, and so on. Constant, staunch, and so on. But in English, faithful doesn't suggest one who has faith. So we have to say for saddha, a person of faith. And then pasada, there's also a problem also with pasada, which we translate as confidence. But then in English, the word confident usually has taken on the connotation of self-confidence, self-assured, poised, self-confidence, self-possessed, even assertive, self-reliant, and so on. Okay, so for pasana, we have to say a person of confidence or a person with trust. Okay, so what is the subtle difference between these two qualities, saddha and pasada? This is the way I would understand it, my own interpretation, that saddha involves, let's say, an element of, let us say that saddha or faith combines belief in the sense of accepting certain like teachings or principles on trust, So there is a cognitive element in saddha, but also that cognitive element goes along with an emotional element of devotion. And then saddha is also seen to motivate certain types of actions. So I'm thinking of the passage which speaks about, Buddha sometimes speaks about a monk as one who has saddhaya pabhajita, or saddha pabhajita, as one who has gone forth out of faith. So faith then becomes the motive, in the case of these monks, for going forth. And in some cases, as in the previous sutta, saddha motivates one to practice generosity towards those in whom one has faith. One can say faith is what comes to expression in the act of saranagamana, the act of going for refuge, or as out of faith that one undertakes precepts. So all of those actions are rooted in saddha. So giving to those in whom one has saddha, undertaking precepts, or going for refuge, undertaking precepts, and then going forth into the homeless life. So those are actions that spring from saddha, or faith, believing certain things, particularly believing the teachings on karma and rebirth, believing the basic principles or planks of the Buddha's worldview, believing the teachings on impermanence, suffering, non-self, believing, placing faith. Even there's a sutta where the Buddha speaks, after teaching dependent origination, he says, have saddha in this. Be without doubt about this. So saddha is the antithesis or antidote towards doubt and wavering. Okay, now pasada, which I translate as confidence, let's say that it characterizes a particular state of mind. And this is the state of mind that arises maybe when somebody obtains saddha, or maybe even before somebody actually gains saddha. Let us say that the word pasada we could understand it through the verb on which it's based. Pasidati, the verb pasidati, and the root of this sidati means to sit. To sit. And then the usual verb that we have in the Pali text for to sit down is nisidati, to sit down. And so when one is sitting down, you see one is passing from a state of activity to a state of quiescence. So one has been walking and walking, then one comes to one's destination, and somebody offers one a seat, and so one sits down. So the activity ceases, and one becomes quiet and still as one sits down. And then pasidati just has a different prefix, pa, but it suggests more explicitly the state of becoming quiescent and still, becoming peaceful. And so pasada is a kind of peacefulness, a tranquility, a settling that occurs in the mind when one encounters an object that inspires trust and confidence. And so we come across like passages. For example, I think of a passage when, maybe you know the story, I think I've related it on occasion, when before Sariputta met the Buddha, he was the wandering ascetic following another teacher. And then as he was traveling around trying to find an inspiring teacher, another teacher, one day he saw the Buddha's Arhat disciple, Asaji, walking on alms round, and he saw him going very peacefully and mindfully from house to house on alms round. And when he saw him, he gained pasada. He didn't yet have saddha, because he didn't even speak to Asaji, but he just saw him walking mindfully on alms round from house to house, and he was very impressed by the mindful demeanor of this monk. And so he acquired pasada. His mind became tranquil and still and confident and trusting. But he didn't even know what kind of teaching this monk is following. You know, it's possible he could have gone to Asaji and said, "What kind of teaching are you following?" And Asaji could have said, "Just go out and have a good time. What are you wasting your time for?" You know, then maybe his pasada would have been shattered. But that didn't happen. But then Asaji recited to Sariputta a verse of 4 lines that summed up the Buddha's teaching. And so when Sariputta heard that verse, well, immediately he got saddha, and then went from saddha to panya and became a stream enterer right on the spot. But suppose he didn't have the sharp faculties of Sariputta, but he came to Asaji, say another person comes to Asaji and says, what is the teaching that you follow? Asaji recites the same verse, and then the person reflects on the verse and thinks, this makes a lot of sense. Then he would gain saddha, because now he knows the teaching, and he gains faith in that teaching, even though he hasn't realized the aim of that teaching. Okay, so that is the subtle distinction between saddha and pasada, which, as I said, they're usually in most situations they're closely interwoven, sort of almost like blended together, a little bit like the cappuccino, coffee. They take the actual coffee, and then what do they use in cappuccino?
Steamed milk. Milk, steamed milk.
Just only steamed milk.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, they blend it, they put it in a blender and they sort of blend together, and then they put a lot of sugar into it, so it all blends together, and so you get this homogeneous mixture, which we call cappuccino. But, you know, on analysis, you could distinguish what is the coffee, what is the sugar, and what is the steamed milk.
Bhante, I was wondering if you would agree that, I thought that the verb passaddati in pasada also has a connotation of a gladness of the mind.
Of a what?
Gladness, a happiness.
Yeah, there is also a kind of gladness associated with it.
Sort of an uplifting of the
Yeah,
mind.
it's an uplifting quality as well. It's a settling quality, but also you could say it's an uplifting, even though uplifting and settling would go, in English they go in different directions.
Bhante, does pasada also have the connotation of purity? Because in Chinese it's always rendered as pure confidence, pure trust, or pure faith.
What is the Chinese rendering?
静信. 静
Jing.
信. Xin is trust, right?
Jing is pure.
Yeah.
Jing, Xin, pure. Yeah, but Xin is faith. So that's I think it's an attempt to capture the blended nature of the way saddha and pasada are blended together. But you see, the Chinese is actually putting the character for faith into that compound, together with the character jing, meaning pure. And so there's the idea that when the mind gains pasada, then a kind of purification takes place. Not the complete purification from defilements. It's not a visuddhi that occurs, but rather that sort of doubt and questioning and agitation sort of settles down and the mind becomes calm. Yeah, so there's also that connotation of pasada and pasanna. There's a kind of calmness that comes into the mind, a settling. Yeah, I said it's a settling of the mind. And I think that there's a simile, actually this is used for faith, but it indicates it better illustrates the function or the operation of pasada. It's the simile, it's said there's a kind of legendary jewel. It's called the water-clearing jewel. And it's said that if you take a bowl of muddy water and you put this jewel into the water, it causes all of the dirt and mud and grime of the water to settle down to the bottom. And then you can take off the clean water. Yeah, Kenneth, and again take the microphone.
But yeah, Bhante, I was wondering, you were just talking about Venerable Asaji meeting Venerable Sariputta and how that created prasada just by seeing.
Yeah.
Would it be similar to say when Siddhartha, when he saw the four sides, the old person, the sick person, the dead body, and then he sees the ascetic for the first time?
Yeah.
Would that be prasada too, because that kind of calmed his mind after seeing the dukkha and that there's a way out? Would that be prasada as well?
Certainly the first three sites didn't, in the case of the first three sites, it was not pasada, but that put into his mind a different quality. That quality is called samvega, which again is one of those words that we can't translate with a single English word. So it's, how do I render it? A sense of urgency.
Sad, yeah.
So it's a kind of agitation which pushes one in the good direction. So that is samvega. When he saw the ascetic, I don't think that he gave him pasada, because he didn't have the confidence in that ascetic, that let me follow that ascetic as my teacher. But that just gave him the idea, according to the traditional story, that that gave him the idea that the way to solve the problem of old age, sickness, and death is through renunciation. Okay, Dan, here on my far left.
Bhante, I'm wondering where I might read more about the framing of the dependent origination in light of faith that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think of it in only one sutta. Let me see. It's okay, I don't like to do this, but I have to do it. It's Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 12, the end of sutta number 51. I mean, I've translated this, so I know where it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can find it quickly. Okay, he says, okay, sadhu, sadhu, after teaching dependent origination in forward and the order of arising and cessation, then he sort of he questions the monks about it, then he says, good, good monks, this is the way it is and not otherwise. And he says, sadahata metang bhikkhave adimuchata. So sadahata, this is the verb from which the noun sada is derived. But here it's the imperative, second person plural imperative. So he's speaking to the monks, put faith in this. Then adimuchata is like, have conviction about this. Then nikanka, be without doubt. Ni vichikicha, be without uncertainty about this.
Bhante, I'm sorry, just a quick question. So when a stream enter attains the unshakable faith,
Yeah.
which word is used?
Yeah, that is pasada. That is a vecha pasada. Okay, so avecha, actually I think the commentaries explain it not correctly. Yeah, so the commentaries explain it as though it were the absolutive or the gerund of avetya. So vetya means, it's from the verb veti, which means to go away. And so avetya means not going away. And so then they take it to be, I think, achala is what they use, unwavering. Unwavering confidence. But I think according to the modern sort of philologist, avetya is actually from ava plus itya, which itya is having gone, and ava gives the sense of down. So it's like having undergone, in the sense of having undergone the experience. So having undergone some degree of realization, having undergone the insight into the Dhamma. So this is the confidence which is based upon the actual experience of the truth of the Dhamma. Then I think in the Sanskrit tradition it gets turned into abhedya, which is unbreakable. So you see, because there are these uncertainties when one is transposing words or translating from the original, more ancient dialect in which the texts were preserved, even preceding what we call Pali, into Sanskrit. There's uncertainties how one handles certain groups of consonants or certain vowels, so you can get different translations, different transpositions. Okay, shall we move? Let's see if we could get it. In fact, I didn't even finish the sutta. Okay, so in 3 cases, one may be understood to have faith and confidence. What 3? So one desires to see those of virtuous behavior. Okay, so then when one desires to hear the good Dhamma, and so and then when one dwells at home with a mind devoid of the stain of miserliness, freely generous, open-handed, delighting in relinquishment, devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. So this highlights, you could say, 3 qualities. Okay, so the first is desiring to see those of virtuous behavior. So one could say that a person of predominantly a faithful temperament will stop at this. So they like just to see the people who inspire faith and confidence. And so for them, that is, uplifting and enriching and inspiring. And the word here, let's see. So you have Silavantanan dasana kamo. So this word dasana, we translate as seeing, but in Indian spirituality it has a much richer connotation than the simple English word seeing. And maybe if you've had any acquaintance with Hindu spirituality, you might be familiar with the Sanskrit form, darshana, or actually in the pronunciation in Hindi, they drop the A, so they call it darshan. So you want to get the darshan. So people, particularly in Hinduism, they'll go to an ashram in order to gain the darshan of a person, an eminent guru. So they're not really concerned to listen to anything, to practice, but they just want to go to get darshan of some great teacher. And even in the Buddhist tradition, even though the Buddha encourages more than this, but in the Buddhist tradition, this also has sort of taken off on a trajectory of its own. So I remember reading about Ajahn Chah, his monastery was originally established way out in the backwoods of the northeast of Thailand, remote region, very difficult of access. But then, maybe starting in the 1960s, 1970s, as Thailand developed economically, the 1970s, then the roads were built, highway system, and then roadways, convenient roadways, highways connecting Bangkok with the northeast, remote northeast province where his monastery was situated. And so buses of pilgrims would come, devotees would come. Every weekend they would come from Bangkok out to the northeast just to gain the sight of Ajahn Chah. And then when they would depart, he would shake his head and think, and say to his disciples, they didn't even ask to hear a word of Dharma. Yeah, so, but the darshan or dasana in itself can be, at least inspire faith and confidence. But for the Buddha, it's not, the Buddha makes it like one of the beginnings, the early initial points in the sequence of spiritual development, but he never stops with darshan and says, that's enough. But through the darshan, then one has to attend regularly upon the spiritual teacher and then listen to the Dharma taught by that teacher. And so that takes us to the second point in the sutta. One desires to hear the good Dharma. So when the faith and confidence, a genuine faith and confidence, not just a kind of tradition, faith and confidence planted in one by tradition, by family upbringing, by sort of the emotional satisfaction that comes from seeing noble teachers. Then one wishes to listen to the Dharma taught by those accomplished teachers. And then the third is quality that's extolled here is generosity. So in a way, that's the way, the earliest step in which faith gets expressed in action is by the practice of generosity. But actually, this sutta is now, we find this in the Book of Threes, but I think as we go through the Anguttara, we get expanded versions. I think in the Book of Fives, these three get supplemented by 2 more items. Then I think in the Book of Sevens, another 2 items are added till we get 7 items, which are the qualities of those with faith and confidence. Then there's a verse. Actually, the verse really doesn't add very much to the prose. So one desires to see the virtuous ones, one wishes to hear the good Dharma, that would be the Dharma taught by the virtuous ones, and one has removed the stain of miserliness. So that is a person endowed with faith. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, then let's see if we could fit in another sutta. Okay, now the sutta opens with the statement, when one sees 3 advantages, it is enough to teach others the Dhamma. Yeah, the word here, advantage or benefit, is attavase. So what are the 3? So the one who teaches the Dhamma experiences the meaning and experiences the Dhamma. So we look at the Pali, so it has atta pati samvedi, and then that is contrasted and paired with dhamma pati samvedi. And it's, I have to say, it's always been a little bit more than a little bit, somewhat perplexing to me. What exactly is the distinction between atta, which is the meaning, and dhamma, which is the Dhamma? So the commentary gives an explanation, which I have to say I don't find completely convincing. How do we... Okay, so the commentary explains to experience the meaning is that one experiences with knowledge the explanation of the meaning, and then it uses, for explanation of the meaning, it uses the word atthakata, which is the actual word, Pali word that means commentary. So it means that one understands the meaning of the commentary. And then for Dhammapati Sangvedi, that it says that one experiences the Dhamma of the canonical text. But this is sort of imposing, I say it imposes on the sutta a distinction, a later distinction it imposes on older terms. And so actually each term has several meanings. So the word atta can signify meaning, benefit, good, which is almost the same as benefit, and the goal. And then the Dhamma can signify the teaching, the verbal teaching, could signify the practice, it could mean the nature of things, and the truth pointed to by the teaching. And so I say, so the contrast between Dhamma and Atta can be seen from one angle as a distinction between the formulated teaching, that would be the Dhamma, and the meaning of the teaching, or else a distinction between the practice, that is, Dhamma as the practice, and Atta as the goal, and then Dhamma as the teaching, and Atta as the benefit that comes from the teaching. Okay, so as I said, there are various ways to interpret this. And what's significant, I think, is that the use of this word pati sangvedi suggests like a direct personal experience. It's not just knowing intellectually, but it's sort of actually experiencing viscerally. Okay, so the first advantage or benefit, so the one who teaches the Dhamma experiences the meaning and experiences the Dhamma. The second benefit, the one who listens, who hears the Dhamma, experiences the meaning and experiences the Dhamma. And the third benefit is that both the one who teaches and the one who listens, both of them experience the meaning and experience the Dhamma. And of course, probably the third benefit should be the highest one. And so, I mean, this is something that I have to say I find myself, like when I have to give a class, I would look at a sutta and then think, okay, these are the points that I'll say, that I'll explain when I'm teaching the sutta. But then when I'm actually giving the talk, suddenly like different aspects of the meaning start to open up in my mind. Things that, of course, maybe I thought of them previously, but they weren't at the surface. But then when I'm actually giving the talk, then those different aspects start coming into the mind. So that would be experiencing the meaning or experiencing the Dhamma. I'm not quite sure where to draw the distinction. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, Will, please take the microphone.
Bhante, I don't understand what the text means here when it says Dhammapati samvedinocha.
What is meant by that means the canonical text.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I said, this explanation in the commentary is drawing a distinction which became prevalent at a later period during the age of the commentaries. The distinction is between the Pali, which is not the language but the canonical text, and then Atthakatha, which is the explanation of the meaning which had been developed by the commentators.
Okay.
Is that Richard? Did you have?
Is it that when you give the talk, you are aware of the difference between the meanings that you had thought of or the official Dhamma, right, and what you believe people are understanding or are unable to understand. In the one case, if you're talking to people who didn't grow up in the culture of the Dhamma, then you're more keenly aware of the difference between what you believe was intended by the Dhamma, right? And whereas if you're talking to people who did grow up with it, you're then more keenly aware of the meanings embodied in the Dhamma culturally.
That's a
and
good
so
view.
these things quite naturally come to your mind because you're aware of all these hints of other people's consciousness of things and the match or mismatch between them. And what
actually, that's
what
a good way to formulate this. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So you could say like the Dhamma. Yeah. You could say the Dhamma is maybe say the fundamental meaning. Well, there I'm using the word meaning. The Dhamma is the fundamental doctrine conveyed by the text, but the meanings would be the significance of that against, let's say, the horizons of understanding of the people that the teaching is being directed towards.
In that case, would it be that the reason that the meaning is a singular in the text is because the culture was far more unified at the time that this was written than it is for us now and on the other side of the world and all of that after so much historical change?
First, the word atta here is actually in the compound, so you can't really, let me just get, you see here it's in a where is it? Yeah, okay. Atta pati sangvedi, so it's part of a compound, so you can't see from the compounded form whether it's singular or plural.
Okay.
And what I would say is that even if it were singular, I would say that the Pali singular could comprise like many different levels of meaning. It wouldn't be tied or bound to one particular meaning.
Okay, so it can be like a mass noun, like water.
Like a what?
A mass noun, like water.
Yeah.
Right? So in which you don't distinguish.
Oh, I see.
Between plural and
a mass noun.
Singular.
I see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other urgent questions? Okay. So then we'll stop for the day. Okay, so let us end with the sharing of the merits. But maybe before this, let me just also say that we won't have a class again next week, because here we have a special program. It's like a program for the young people, the counselors, during the summer camp. So we have like a weekend program for them. And then the week after that, the Saturday after that, is the Buddhist Global Relief, the Walk to Feed the Hungry. So again, do you have more flyers for that? If anybody hasn't gotten a flyer, and please do take, especially those who are connected with Dhamma centers, temples. Yeah, you're welcome to take. But even if you just want for your own reference, it's very beautifully designed. Yeah, so that will be Saturday, October 27th. Riverside Park in Manhattan. Registration, I think, starts 9 a.m., but it's okay even if you get 9:30, it's okay. And the walk itself starts at 10. Don't turn up just at 10 o'clock. And so the next class will be the Saturday after that. That will be November 3rd, I believe. And November 3rd is close to election day, voting day. So for those who are of sufficient age, yeah, I guess everybody. You will be, you're not 18 yet. So you should, if you're not registered, you should register, and you should certainly vote. Very important to vote on election day. Don't think that's for them to do. We don't have to take part in that. Okay, so we'll end with the sharing of the merits. So we share the merits with the devas, the nagas or dragon spirits, the bhutas, the fair spirits, and with all sentient beings. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhutanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Pavagupadaya vici hetato etantare satakayupapanna rupya rupicha sanya sanyino dukkha pamuchantu posantu nibuting. Okay, and then we end with 3 half bows to the Buddha. Oh, I should mention also that today we won't be having a question and answer period, and the dining hall now it's reserved from 11:30 to 12 noon for those people on the meditation retreat. And so if you want to go there for the lunch, you should wait until 12 o'clock.
about the